to Australia.
Australian English is a variety of the English language which originally diverged from British English when the Brits came and took over Australia. It is today used by the majority of the population in Australia, but there are still many similarities to the British English. For example, Australian English can sometimes sound a bit similar to the English Cockney accent because the people who found Australia were from the south of England. Many words are also used in the same way as in the UK. For example, when Americans say pacifier, Australians and Brits say dummy. Or when Americans say cart, Australians and Brits say trolley. Australians are also similar to Brits in the way that they use many slang words. In fact, they are one of the countries that use the most slang words in the world. The native Australians, Aborigines, different languages have also influenced the Australian English. For example, Canberra, the name of the capital, is an Aboriginal word meaning meeting place. And kangaroo is also Aboriginal, but unfortunately, linguists haven't been able to find the meaning of this word, which most likely is because that the specific accent died out. Some slang words that are more Australian are, for example, bludger, meaning lazy person, barbie, meaning barbecue, and servo, meaning petrol station. So remember these words and facts the next time that you visit Australia.
Culture in Australia used to be influenced by the Anglo-Celtic Western culture, but since the mid-20th century it has been influenced by the American pop culture. Of course, they've also been influenced by the indigenous people, the Aborigines. The Aborigines have lived in Australia for a long time and have a different culture. They believe in spirits and they told their traditions through ceremonies and stories about the dream time. The Aborigines' art was often body painting, cave painting and stone engravings. The Australian art has since started been inspired by the Australian landscape. The Australian cinema industry started in 1906 at the release of The Story of Kelly Gang. Now Australia has a lot of famous actors like Heath Ledger and Nicole Kidman. In Australia they have different holidays. Anzac Day is one of them. It takes place on the 25th April and commemorates the Australian and New Zealand Army Corps landing in Turkey in 1915. Australian Day takes place on the 26th of January and celebrates the British settlement. On this day, many cities hold firework events. On these holidays, they eat Australian food. Like for example, on Anzac Day, they eat Anzac biscuits. The biscuits were made during the war by whites and sent to the soldiers. A lamington is another Australian dessert. It is a sponge cake cut in squares. Another dessert with Australian origin is the pavlova. It's named after the Russian ballet dancer Anna Pavlova and is believed to have been created during one of her tours to Australia and New Zealand. The main ingredient is egg whites and caustic sugar, and the cake is garnished with strawberries, kiwi fruit, passion fruit and cream.
The Aborigines were the first people ever set foot on the Big Island, Australia. They came for over 40,000 years ago, but it's not clear where they came from. An idea could be that they came from Southeast Asia in small boats. The Aborigines spoke up to 250 different languages in almost over 500 tribes. In the 17th century, an Englishman called Captain James Cook and his crew arrived in the east coast of Australia and claimed it for Britain. The new colony got their first people sent in boats carrying 1,500 people, which half of them were convicts. Until 1868, the Englishmen sent prisoners to live in Australia because they had too many prisoners in Britain. And during that time, Australia was a brutal place with a lot of convicts and no guards. The 26th of January 1788 was the first time the British people ever set their flag on Australia, and that is the National Day of Australia. The Aborigines had to give up the land when the British came because they were not used to fighting and they could not use war. A lot of them died because of diseases that Europeans brought with them. Botany Bay, or Hell as they called it, was the place where all the prisoners were sent in Australia. It is currently known as Sydney. The story of Aborigines is very tragical because they were not the one to shape the history of Australia. It was the prisoners. And even though Aborigine means urine people, they sadly are not reminding us that. Australia has some of the world's most distinctive and diverse natural environments. They have rare wildlife mixed with old ancient plains. And then you can find the world's biggest reef. It's called the Great Barrier Reef. It's so big that you can see it from outer space. It's over 2,000 kilometers wide. Another famous thing for Australia is kangaroos. They are very popular there, and they even have an own island called Kangaroo Island. In Australia, they also have the world's largest sand island. It's over 22 kilometers wide, and it's called Fraser Island. The climate of Australia is very hot. The largest part of Australia is covered in the desert, but in the northern part of Australia, it's a tropical environment. So if you go into Australia, be sure to check out every side of the country.
Australia's official name is the Commonwealth of Australia. Very few people knew that Australia was a monarchy. The form of the government is actually a constitutional monarchy. But what does that mean? It means that Australia has a monarch, which is a queen or a king, and that the monarch has a role in the country, but that role is limited. At the time Australia became its own nation, at 1901, it still kept some connection with the United Kingdom. That means that Queen Elizabeth II is the Queen of Australia as well, and she's also Australia's head of state. A head of state is the public representative of a country, who may also be the head of government. The Parliament of Australia works like this. Voters elect 12 senators from each state and 2 from mainland territories, for a total of 76 senators. Senators from states serve 6-year terms, and those from the mainland territories serve 3-year terms. Australia's Gold Coast is a well-known paradise for surfing. Its weather makes it an ideal destination for all kinds of water sports, and it's not surprising that one of the biggest attractions on the coast is water parks. You can dive or snorkel in the Great Barrier Reef. But except for these water sports, you can do lots of other things too. You can, for example, go on a multi-day hike. Pack your backpacks, lace your Gore-Tex boots. Australia's iconic trek in the Overland Tracks in Tasmania is a 6-day, 5-night epic that takes you through 65 kilometers from Crowd Valley in the north to Lake St. Clair in the south.